Hi everyone, we're all back from lunch and have our afternoon coffee ready for our afternoon session of the National Employment Law Conference. Now, just a quick reminder again, earlier in the day, we will basically have all our mics on mute, but I had a short chat with Professor Loredana before this, and she was mentioning she can be a bit more interactive where you can ask questions throughout and through the chat. So I'll let her lead on that part and assist her where we can. Let me quickly introduce our next speaker, who is the Associate Dean of the Asia School of Business, which is a collaboration between the Central Bank of Malaysia and MIT Sloan School of Management, who is also an International Faculty Fellow at MIT Sloan. Under her leadership, the Action Learning Program at ASB, which is the Asia School of Business, it was recognized repeatedly as one of the most innovative programs in the world. She's an international keynote and TEDx speaker that has shared the stage with impressive names such as Steve Wozniak, Bob Geldof, ministers, deans, authors, and public figures in the United States, Asia Pacific, and Europe. She has taught in various MIT Sloan executive programs, as well as at regional companies such as AirAsia, Maybank, Axiata, CIMB, Khazanah, and many more. Now, she's going to be presenting to us a topic on the smart and sharp remote and hybrid work culture. So I'll pass it over to you, Professor. And from there, if you need our assistance, do let us know.
Thank you, Amira. That was such a nice introduction. I almost, I'm impressed by myself for a second. And then I just remember that this is just a bio. This is what every one of us has, right? So thank you so much for having me. This is a very intimidating group, I have to admit, because I know a lot of you that work in the space of human resources have a lot of experience with helping people trying to figure out how to, in a way, come back to a new norm and a new reality. But it's my absolute pleasure to be with you. I hope that I have met you before in the past, but I'm not sure. So far, all I see it's names on black screens. I understand if you're tired to keep your camera open, but if at some point, if you want to turn it on just to say hi to me, I would appreciate that. The experience of teaching online, it's a little bit like talking to yourself in a mirror, because there's nobody else to tell you how you're doing. There's no feedback. There's no, there's no human interaction. So for the past 18 months, I talked to myself more than any other probably mental health patient should. And I can't wait for all of us to come back to work. Having said that, I don't know about you, and I really want to ask you to maybe use the chat and interact with me a little bit in this. I don't know how many of you feel excited about going back to the office. I have an amazing office. I have a corner office, and I still prefer working from home. And right now, you can't see my background, thanks God. But right now, my setup is very quirky. I have a chair on top of a drawer with lights around it. My cat is on the bed. So it's this juxtaposition, this very interesting juxtaposition and contrast between, the professional setup of going in the office, getting dressed, putting on shoes, which I'm not wearing today, or being at home, being a little bit more comfortable at home, but also being torn about the fact that you are always working when you're at home. So Umi and the organizers asked me to talk a little bit about the hybrid and the remote culture. And I have to say, I'm not really an expert in hybrid and remote culture, but I'm an expert, I think. I'm probably not, but I'm more of an expert in people. And one of the things that I've been doing for the past 5 or 6 years was trying to understand people. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Amira already introduced me. So I'm a senior associate dean at Asia School of Business. I've been in Malaysia from the first day of ASB. So I'm very proud to say that I'm on the books. I think I'm an employee number 1, not in performance, just in contract. And then I've been, right now I'm in Malaysia. I just returned from Europe. I was a COVID refugee for about 5 months. I went to Europe to get vaccinated, and then I don't want to come back to Malaysia. Today is my first free day of quarantine, so I'm not wearing any bracelet. And I think Friday I'm gonna go to the office for the first time since February, I think. So this talk actually speaks to me a lot, because like I said, when Umi asked me to think about it, I was like, how do I feel about, remote and hybrid work culture? Like Amira said, I'm sure that some of you know about us. We are Bank Negara Malaysia startup in collaboration with MIT Sloan. In 2015, when we were formed, we signed a deal with MIT for the next 10 years. Initially, I thought I'm going to be in Malaysia for 16 months, and it's been 6 years and a half. So time flies when you're having fun. I'm also teaching in a few other programs, and I had the pleasure and the opportunity to be part of a lot of programs here in Malaysia and beyond. So let's talk about work, baby. Let's talk about working from home, working from the office. I looked at the schedule of your conference, and I saw that a lot of these theme speakers that you had already covered these things, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to share with you statistics about work. I'm not going to share with you statistics about the challenges of working from home, working from the office, working in a hybrid mode. But what I want to propose today is a set of skills that I have been experimenting with at Asia School of Business that I noticed that work when it comes to working with people, be that in a hybrid or in a remote way. We all know that going back to the office is not going to be a very sort of like no issue kind of a thing. Like I said, for many of us, the comfort of working from home oversees in a way the discomfort of working from home. Obviously, if you have a lot of people in the household and you have to share the Zoom space, the broadband, and the food over, you probably are dying to go back to the office. But a lot of us have learned that, the commute is a lot easier. You don't spend a lot of time in the setup. You barely put on makeup unless you have a conference presentation. But there is a very interesting debate about what's happening with the work environment, and working from home, or at least having the option to work from home for a couple of days, is an option that every single one of us should consider. So there are challenges with working from home. There are challenges with working in the office, and probably there are even more challenges in working in a hybrid space, right? Because at least when we all work in the office, there's a sort of like a sense of fairness. There's a practice that everybody has to go through. When we all work from home, there's again an alignment and a relative sense of fairness, even though obviously it's not fair that some of us have an easier life at home than others. But there's an expectation that we're all sort of in the same bucket. And then on the other hand, what happens is, if you have this hybrid culture where only some people work in the office and only some people work from home, there's a lot of questions that are arising. And speaking of questions, I really, really want you to every now and then say something on the chat or turn on your cameras. Like I said, the life of a speaker on Zoom, it's a very lonely life. So every now and then, if you guys want to turn on a camera and show me your faces, I would appreciate that. So once again, what do we do? This is your job, right? My job is just to teach and to reflect and to observe people, but this is your job. How do you prepare your organization for a fair, equal practice of working in a multi-environment type of a setup, right? Because how many of you can relate to this? But how many of you have people who came to your office in the HR office and say, I feel like I'm not treated fairly. I feel like I'm not fairly paid. I feel like somebody gets more, bonus than others. I feel like somebody gets a better deal than I have. If you've never experienced that, I don't know what organization you work for, but can I work for you? Because I have never met any HR colleague in the world that has not dealt with that. So working in this triple space, from home, from the office, and then remotely, it will create a lot of, I think it will create a lot of challenges. But we can come ahead with these challenges if we do something about it. So this is my favorite expression of my entire career. I used to be only a professor of management, and being a professor of management was relatively comfortable because I only have to talk about management. But then the reality was, once I became a dean and I had to become a manager, which I actually don't really like, I realized that the job is a lot easier, but working with people, it's not. And I think unless you're somebody who only deals with robots, every single one of us can relate to this. Do you relate to this? Do you find that sometimes the job is easy, the people are not? I'm sure that you do. Thank you, Heslina. Heslina is the first one to say something on the chat. Heslina, I'll give you 5 extra points Thank you, Lisha. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Evelyn. Evelyn, I feel like we've met before, or at least your name is very familiar to me. Like I said, it's very hard to relate to people when you can't see them. You only see names. So in the past, and still today, I think you as HR experts had to do a lot of conflict moderation or people moderation, where you thought, oh, if only this person would have better soft skills, right? Because there's very few conflicts coming out from hard skills. So about 6 years ago, when I came to Malaysia for the first time, I kept hearing people saying, oh, this is just soft skills. Doesn't matter. It's just soft skills. It's like, fine. It's fine. We're looking for the hard skills. And I was like, fine, the hard skills seems to be harder, seems to be more complicated. But then, like I said, once I became also a leader and an executive, and I realized, hold on, if the job is easy and the people are not, and a lot of us could, improve our soft skills, why is it that we still call the skills soft? I mean, what exactly is soft about, managing people, about dealing with your board? I just had a board meeting yesterday for 5 hours. Trust me, I needed a drink after that, at least one. What is soft about, managing diversity? I mean, we all love diversity, right? But the truth is that we glorify it a little bit without realizing how complicated it is to deal with diversity. Office politics, that's a soft skill, right? So how exactly we still call these skills soft? And then what I learned is, as I'm doing a lot of executive education, and many of you HR leaders like you in the room are the ones who have to sort of look for programs, put together proposals. Even if you're not part of the learning and development teams, you do know that this happens. And I would I have a lot of friends in the HR space in Malaysia, and they would say, it's a lot harder for me to tell a senior leader that they have to improve on their soft skills, because it's like, yeah, it's soft, but what's the big deal about it? So I'm sure that many of you know this, but just in case there's one person in the room that doesn't know, the soft and the hard skill terminology was coined in 1972 by a US Army doctor who noticed that some of his soldiers were very good at some things, like the hard things, like the important things, like, I don't know, shooting people, dealing with machines, operations. And he called these skills hard skills because those were the important skills. And for everything else that he couldn't put in the category of hard, he said, yeah, that's soft skills. That's people stuff. Believe it or not, this is 50 years ago. We have never really reconsidered how we look at this, the name of the skills. And you could think, Lisha could say, listen, Loredana, this is just mumbo jumbo, because at the end of the day, you're just changing words, right? And Lisha would be absolutely right. And Evelyn could come and say, yeah, what changes for me if I call them smart or soft or sharp or hard? So I had a lot of conversations similar to the one that I'm having with Lisha right now. Sorry, delivery is coming exactly when you don't need it. Hold on. Yes? Yeah. Okay, please let them in. Both. Working from home. Yes, please. Thank you. Do I want fog in my house? I guess I do. I don't know. Does this happen to you when you're in meetings? I told them to. I know, Alvin, right? I don't know what I promised. I don't know what I said yes to. There's got to be some fogging. So if at some point I'm getting high, just there's some fogging happening in my house. Thank you, Farah, right? It happens to all of us. So like I said, remember I was having a conversation, who I was having a conversation with? Lisha, right? Lisha was saying, listen, Loredana, you're just changing words. What the big deal that we don't call this skill soft anymore? So I'm going to tell Lisha that soft for me, only for me, I'm sure for you it's different. Soft has an implication of smooth, of gentle, of quiet, tender, and weak. And by your names, I can't really tell, but there's also an implication that soft comes from the feminine space, that women are softer, they're better at the soft skills, but they're soft. So like I said, for me, there's nothing really soft about this skill. So at ASB, we forbid people to use the word soft skills and we replace them with smart. Because also what I've noticed is that if somebody doesn't have the skills to work with people, it's not that they're absolutely hard, it's just that they're dumb. they don't have the right, human intelligence. They don't have the right adaptability skills. They don't have whatever that is, right? Now, the same thing about hard skills. So when I was younger, I'm still young, by the way, but when I was a little bit younger, thank you, Alicia. When I was a little bit younger, I used to hear this all the time. Oh, it's only the hard skills that matter. Do math. Math is going to be the thing that saves you. Now, guys, I have to tell you, I ended up at the National Olympics in math, but I was a little bit of a bitch. I was very hard to deal with. I was very sharp in my attitude. It was very hard to convince me to do anything but I wanted to do, but I had the hard skills. Then I had a boss who had amazing hard skills. He had a PhD in economics from Oxford. He got a lot of awards. He was terrible. He was a horrible human being, but we constantly was told that, the hard skills is the ones that matter. However, when I started to be a little bit more aware of stuff in general, I realized that the more you advance in your career, especially today, when we don't have a lot of tolerance for bullshit, if I can say that in front of you, where you have a lot of the millennials who come in and say, no, I don't want the boss, I want the mentor. Have you heard that before? I work with millennials. Oh, please save me. And the Z's are coming now. You think that the millennials were hard? Wait until the Z's are coming in my class. So same thing with hard. And I thought, so this means that if I learn math 20 years ago, I'm good. I don't need to learn math anymore. If somebody learned an engineering software, they don't have to learn it anymore. If somebody learned a new coding language, that's it. Because it's a hard skill, right? So hard for me was rigid, resistant, free of weakness, very harsh, very severe. So no more. I said, you know what? It's okay, La. No more. We don't call them these hard skills. We call them sharp, because there's an implication for me in my understanding of language. I don't know in yours, but something that is sharp, in order to stay sharp, you constantly have to sharpen it. You constantly have to update it. So, I was an Olympian in math 20, 30 years ago, but my math skills are pretty poor right now because I haven't spent any more time sharpening those skills. I see a lot of my colleagues who are experts in hard skills, previously known as hard skills, but they constantly have to go back to the books and say, hey, there's a lot of obsolescence if we don't learn this. So, like I said, I decided that we don't call them soft and hard anymore. We call them smart and sharp. So smart skills for me are all the skills required to deal with a people space, and sharp skills are all the skills required to deal with technical. And now let me ask you a tricky question. And like I said, I can't really tell your reactions, but I appreciate that you're commenting in the chat. Would you rather have executives who are both soft and hard, or would you prefer they are smart and sharp? See, there's another thing about words. Words actually tell a story, and words, soft and hard, are almost at the pole opposite of each other. So you're either or. And I think of smart and sharp more as a yin and yang. I lived in Asia for 6 years. I used to live in India before this. Thank you, Heslina. Exactly. We need a good balance of both. You can't really say, oh, you know what, you have a PhD in math and in data science, and you don't have to be any smart skills. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. Gone are the days when we tolerated a lot of, less than smart behavior because somebody would get away with very sharp skills. So I was thinking about, like I said, this challenge that we have about working from home, right? Or working in a hybrid place, or this is a challenge in itself. Right? Imagine that we were together in a room physically. I could actually read, Alicia's body language. I can see that Fadliana was smiling. I can see that Tenkufara was laughing. But in this case, I cannot. All I do is rely on your generosity to share some physical verbal cues, right? So it turns out that working remotely, be that in hybrid or completely online, so completely from home, it requires us to get smarter. It requires more smart skills than before. And I put together a few smart skills that I'm also teaching my students. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the few. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. So it's 2:20. Amira, I think I have until 3 o'clock, including Q&A, right? So if I'm running out of time, please keep me posted. So these are the, all right, I have until 3:15. You should have waited, because if I suck, you can close me at 3, but now you just gave everybody 15 extra minutes of hell. All right, now I have to be good, I guess. Thank you, Amira. So, but I also, I've been thinking about, today I'm going to talk more about smart skills, because I think smart skills are a little bit more important in this convoluted space of working from home, remotely, all that. But I also put together a list of sharp skills that I think employees need today. And obviously some of us need more, some of us needs less, but let's talk about smart, okay? So when you work in person, you can have a lot more interactions, right? I can go to Elvin and say, hey, Elvin, only 2 minutes of your time. What do you think of this, this project? And Elvin could say, you know what, Loredana, I see that the concept is there, but I would like you to maybe synthesize a little bit more the information and then only bring me that evaluation. Now, Elvin and I, probably that interaction costed what, 3-5 minutes. When we do that from home, or even worse in a hybrid mode, that's going to require, Elvin, how long do you think? At least of an hour of a Zoom, right? And probably we could have saved that in 20 minutes in the office. 10 minutes, we talk about your kids and what you had for breakfast. And then, you know, we're done. So I think working in a remote or from home requires us to sharpen our strategic thinking, in the sense that when you come into a meeting, it makes a lot of sense to come in with more of a conceptualized process, with a synthesized process, with information that has been evaluated before we spend the time together. Elvin is not very convinced. He's like, I don't know about that, Loredana. All right, let's see, Elvin. Have you heard of followership? Do you know that we talk about leadership all the time, but we never talk about followership? Is it that the whole world is a leader and nobody follows? So for me, followership is not following my boss, right? Let's say that, you know, I see Michelle here, Michelle Kang. Let's say that Michelle Kang is my boss. For me, followership is not blindly following Michelle Kang. For me, followership is the capacity and willingness to follow a leader that can be defined as a mission, a vision, a project, a plan, an agreement. Exactly, Heslina, if you're not prepared for the meeting, you'll just consume too much time. And at the end, you're gonna think, oh my God, another Zoom. So let's play a game. Not looking at today, because I assume today is still your conference. But if you look at Thursday or Friday, how many meetings do you have on Zoom? So for me, today is the record. I have 13 meetings today. Do you really think that I walk in all these meetings with the strategic mindset? Of course not. So a lot of these meetings could actually disappear if you have a little bit more of a strategic and critical mindset. Now, for me, followership is very, very important. Why is that? So let's say that Heslina and I have a conversation about the project, and Heslina says, I don't really know if I agree with your direction. And I said, all right, let's talk about this. I think that we should go into this market. And Heslina said, no, maybe we should look into this market. We can hire more talent from this market. So we go back and forth, right? But at some point, we're going to have to agree on something. So let's say, you know, we go to Heslina's idea. Followership for me, and especially in an online or hybrid space, is also the capacity for both of us and our teams to follow something that we have agreed on. Because what happens a lot of the times, in physical space, you can go to others and you can sort of get a little bit of validation from others. But in a hybrid, or even worse, from home, or even worse, in a hybrid space, Heslina and I could probably try to, maybe not intentionally, but we could even end up sabotaging a project, right? Because Heslina says she leaves the meeting, she agrees with me in the meeting, but then she's like, I'm not really sure I want to do this. Let me go and talk to others. Let me not be available. One of the things that I learned when I came to Malaysia, that if somebody disagrees with you, they will never say no, because we're very nice people. They will just be quiet and absent, right? So like I said, for me, followership is more the capacity that once we have agreed on something, and we can have the debate, boss, stakeholders, shareholders, whatever that is. But once we have agreed on something, we both have the capacity and willingness to follow what we have agreed on. This is so obvious that I don't even think that I should talk about it anymore. I mean, adaptability. It's amazing to see how adaptable people got overnight a year and 6 months ago, when we all had to work from home from, you know, Monday to Tuesday. So it's not that we don't have this muscle. It's not that we don't know how to adapt. It's just that it's a little bit harder for some of us to adapt and more than others. But I would say in a hybrid mode, even more than either the office or the online, adaptability is not just related to how adaptable I am personally to change, but it's also how adaptable I am to expect change from others. So if let's say I'm just gonna pick on somebody. If Faisal, I see Faisal Shapi here. If Faisal has a very different work dynamic than mine, if I don't have children, right? So for me, work schedule can be very easily 9 to 7. But if Faisal has kids, and Faisal is a great dad, and Faisal has to go and pick up his kids, and then he has to bring them, home and feed them and maybe help a little bit with the homework, but I don't have that. It is required very much of me to have a much higher level of adaptability and to work not around, but to work with Faisal on both our schedules. So Faisal could say to me, Loredana, how about this? From 9 to 1, we work on our company hours. From 1 to 3, I need flex time because I need to deal with my kids and lunch and homeworks and all that. And then I'll recover this 2 hours later on in the day, but I'm not going to come to you after your working hours are over. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So a hybrid world and even an online world requires a much higher level of adaptability when it comes to working with people of a different work dynamic. So I work with a lot of moms, working moms, and I would never say to a working mom who works from home with 2 kids who are pretending to learn something on Zoom, because let's be very honest, no kid learns anything on Zoom these days. Like I used to be a kindergarten teacher. If somebody learns something on Zoom, they are a genius, but it's very hard for kids to actually, impactfully learn something on Zoom. It's an activity, but the parents have to put in a lot more work these days for kids to learn. So when I work with moms, and I say moms mostly because, we all know that in general, women have to invest more in the household management. But if I work with somebody, yeah, absolutely, Siazila. So if I work with somebody that has a very different family dynamic than mine, isn't that also my responsibility to adapt to their family dynamics? But also, isn't your responsibility to make sure that my dynamic is also respected? So if I'm willing to be available between 9 and 7, let's say, 9 to 5, it's an illusion. I don't know who's the idiot who came up with the 9 to 5. Dolly Parton sang about it 30, 40 years ago, but nobody works from 9 to 5 anymore. But you as a person want to work with from 9 to 9 with a 3-hour break, please don't text me after 7, right? Because I'm respecting your space, you need to respect mine. So this adaptability, like I said, is not just my internal adaptability to work with a new space, but it's also understanding how others work. So validation is probably, I would say, is not even top 10. I think for me it's top 3 most important smart skills you need to develop when working in this sort of bizarre environment. So let me validate somebody here in the room. So Heslina, thank you so much for the couple of comments that you made in a chat. I really appreciate that that you clearly give me the impression that you're listening. I appreciate your comment about the meetings and the comments about the balance. Because you're listening so well, I feel like there's an empathy in the room and I feel like I'm being heard. This is what validation is. Validation is very different than giving feedback, right? I could give Heslina feedback and say, hey, Heslina, maybe next time write me privately. It doesn't matter, right? Or it's very different than cheering. Hey, Heslina, good job for talking to me. In a space where visual cues, where human element has been completely replaced, where I am literally talking to myself on the screen now because not one camera is open. So I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if somebody's paying attention. Verbal validation is important because otherwise you're sort of sitting there thinking, is there anybody out there? I have to tell you a very funny story. One of my students tells me, he said, Professor, I was very, very upset yesterday because I was in a Zoom meeting and I kept talking and nobody said anything and nobody, thank you, my love. Nobody replied to me. And I was like, nobody likes me. What have I done? I kept bringing up ideas and I was so depressed. And I sent you a text. I said, can I talk to you tomorrow because I have a problem with my team. Nobody wants to talk to me in my team. And then he realized that his mic was broke actually. And he wasn't muted, but his mic was not working and his camera was not working. So the poor kid was talking literally to himself. The other team members were thinking, this person doesn't say anything. They're completely disconnected. All they needed to do was probably use the chat and say, hey, Siazila, how are you? I can't hear you. Are you there? I know. Can you believe that, Fadliana? So this person was going through hell thinking, oh, these people don't want to talk to me. They don't want to work with me. Nobody likes me. It turns out the mic was broke. But validation in a remote or hybrid environment is extremely important because once it tells you that, yes, you're going in the right direction, or validation can also be the opposite, right? You don't have to agree with something. You can say, Hazina, it's a really interesting point that you brought up about, we're spending too much time in the meeting and we're not very focused. But also let me just say that maybe that meeting is important for us to brainstorm, right? So I can validate you without necessarily agreeing, but at least Hazlina should feel like, oh, she's listening. Somebody's hearing me. I'm still here. I still matter. My feelings, my opinions are valid. Because once again, remember, the job is easy. The people are not, right? Critical skill, maybe once again in the top 3. The problem with the top 3 is that it's too little, so that's why I have a top 10. Managing up. So traditionally, managing up was a skill defined as developing a good relationship with your boss. Not anymore, or at least not in my definition. I think of managing up as the skill necessary to solve problems that your stakeholders need. How do you know that in a hybrid mode? How do you know that in an online mode? Now, hybrid is even harder because if, let's say, Hazwani and Kairunisa and I work in the office, but Faisal, Evelyn, and Amira are working from home, there's a very high chance that the 3 of us who work in the office have a much higher interaction rate, right? And we could even end up doing things faster and, maybe more effectively because we see each other more often. Now, part of managing up, and also this takes me back to validation, is to make sure that in a multi-stage environment, hybrid, online, from home, everybody is equally managed in terms of problems, right? So and that's what I mean by managing up. Managing up, I mean stakeholders, but managing up can also be somebody who reports to you. That's what I mean. It's just the problems that your stakeholders need to be solved. So in a way, you have to think always in at least 2 mindsets, the in the office and from home. So it's not going to be very easy, I have to say. I think working 100% online for all companies was a lot easier than what hybrid is gonna bring. Just when we thought things are gonna get better. Listening. Isn't it obvious? So listening is not just listening to somebody on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Listening is the capacity to fully focus on somebody speaking, on their ideas, on their message, on their point of view, and then comprehend the information and then respond thoughtfully. I would say that one advantage of Zoom is that it's a little bit harder to interrupt somebody unless you keep your mic on all the time and you just interrupt. But Zoom or Microsoft Teams, I hate Microsoft Teams, so I'm going to talk about Zoom, but Zoom is in a way has a self-correction mechanism, because before you say something stupid, you have to press the mic. Some of us are very fast like me, and most of the time I say stupid things and then I'm like, that mic should have been muted by default. But listening for me, once again, it's not just saying, hey, I hear you. No, it's like I truly listen, and then I'm trying to manage you up, and then I'm going to validate you. And then I'm going to bring, a strategic and critical perspective to this project. Make sense so far, people? Are you still with me? Thank you very much. So I have two rings. Badrul is not only listening, but he's also seeing. Thank you very much. So I have to tell you, I'm trying to dress up for Zooms, even though I'm not wearing shoes, but I feel like I never dress up, right? You're thinking too, Heslina. I appreciate that, not just listening, but also thinking. So I put my picture here. Thank you, Catherine. I put my picture here, not because I have such a big ego that I want to be on the slides, but because this is the skill that I'm missing. And I thought if I give this talk and I put it here and I'm constantly reminding myself. So emotional maturity for me, it's a very, very important skill in general, not just in working from home or remotely. But so what is emotional maturity? It's not emotional intelligence. It's very different. Emotional intelligence is the capacity to recognize emotions, right? It's the capacity to read emotions on somebody. And I have to say, I have dogs and cats. They both can recognize emotions. When my cats see me that I'm happy and I want to play with them, they can recognize that, but they can also tell when I'm upset and that they run in another room, right? Emotional intelligence is not necessarily a humane skill, like a human skill. It's, it's a probably a mammal. I don't know if the fish can recognize emotions. They can recognize me when I feed them, but I don't think it's an emotion. Yeah, I have a lot of animals in my house. But I think of emotional maturity as the ability to understand and manage your emotions. So how many times you as HR executives and leaders had to deal with, colleagues who were called in the office because they couldn't manage their emotions, or they had outbursts, or they were unprofessional and rude with somebody, or that they lost it, or they started, having a meltdown. And I have to say, in the past 18 months, I think we have been damaged emotionally more than probably the previous 10 years. So you will see that there's going to be a lot of evidence and a lot of research that will talk about how emotionally damaged most of us are. I think there's a very clear fragility, emotional fragility that we all exhibit. There's a much higher, a much lower tolerance for stress, dramatically lower. I think we're losing our shit a little bit faster. I think our fuses are a little bit shorter. So if the job was easy, the people are not before the pandemic, what are we going to do after? I started to see a shrink about 3 months ago, not because I felt like I was going through a crisis, but because I felt like I feel like I am going to be in trouble if I don't tackle this right away. So Heslina says, during work from home, my team had more meltdowns due to the limited ability to communicate freely at home versus the office, and the stress of not being able to go out. Absolutely, Heslina. And let me tell you, you're not the only one. My students are very smart professionals. They are not very young. Maybe the youngest is 25, average is 30. And I have seen more meltdowns this year than I have ever seen in my life. And like I said, I have a very, very lucky, by choice, but a very lucky life working from home. I don't have any other distractions. I live by myself. I have a house with a pool. The quarantine was really nothing for me in that sense. I'm also extremely introverted. So for me, being by myself was a joy. But I have colleagues who live in a 3-bedroom apartment, if they're lucky, with 2-3 kids, a dog and a cat, because the children wanted pets during the quarantine. And now they're like, all right, what are we going to do with them? And you can hear people in the background talking, and, you can see these people wearing their headphones and trying to concentrate. And I'm like, how do they do it? I can barely keep my act together, and all I need to do is take care of myself. But I've seen, how many of you have seen things that you should have not seen on Zoom? Like, I have seen people walking in the background, scratching their pants. I have seen people without their shirts on. You have to laugh at it. You have to have the emotional maturity to say, you know what, we're just going to focus on what's essential. And there's a oh God, I'm missing the word now, but there's a syndrome for people. Oh yes, the solitary confinement syndrome. You know what solitary confinement is? When prisoners have been put by themselves in a cell. It's a terrible, terrible human punishment. Humans are terrible in general, but solitary confinement is one of the most, cruel things to do to another human. And I've seen a bit of research. There's not a lot of research yet, but I've seen a bit of research that says that a lot of us who are coming out of this quarantine will have similar syndromes to people who were released out of solitary confinement. So when you come out of solitary confinement, you are extremely sensitive to everything. The light is too bright, the sounds are too harsh, the smells are too intense, the interactions are too much. Cabin syndrome too, yeah. The solitary confinement comes with obviously, like I said, it's a very, very dramatic thing, but cabin syndrome maybe is more appropriate for this, as Lina. And I think what we're gonna see, it's a much higher level of fragility, much higher level of fragility. At ASB, we have psychologists full-time on staff, a professional coach, who's a therapist. And then we have, I think, 6 other coaches, mental health care experts, for a company of 200 people, students and staff. Isn't that a lot? 7 for 200? And we have seen these people being used more now than, so I've seen the bills for the past 3 months. And in 3 months, we used more hours with these coaches than we have used in the past 3 years. So emotional maturity, once again, is the ability to understand and manage your emotions, is understanding that, today I'm not feeling that well and I need probably to do something about it. Maybe, I breathe in 10 times more, I lay off the coffee, or I drink more coffee, or, I call a friend and I get things off my chest. But I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but like I said, I have a feeling that besides the euphoria that is going to come with coming back in the office, the fuse is going to be shorter for many of us. Now, humility is another very important aspect in working in multiple dimensions, right? Because humility, so I don't think humility is modesty. Let me just define it, that for me, humility is very different than modesty. I think of humility is the capacity to understand that the more you know, the less you know. Once again, the more you know, the less you know. Is the capacity to look at other people's value and understand that what they do is important to what you do. And once again, because we live in this hybrid space, where unless we talk all the time, it's very hard for us to know what everybody else is doing, right? And if Afik and I never meet in person, I just have to humbly assume that Afik is doing his work, and then it's not even gratitude. It's like when people are in isolation or in separate environments, we start to assume that we do more work than others, then our service is more, intense or more taxing or more expensive than others, that our efforts are higher. And it could be that some people work more than others, but I think a heavy dose of humility, it's very, very important. My boss says that the world is full of smart and arrogant people out there. I want to work with the smart and humbled ones. So another important dimension that I learned that it's important for a multiple dimension workplace is a cultural and ethical literacy. So it's the capacity to understand cultural perspectives and ethical perspectives. So we went through, I think we had 2 Ramadans during lockdowns, right? And obviously, I'm not Muslim. I lived in Malaysia for 6 years. I understand what Ramadan is. Believe it or not, in Christianity, we actually fast for 40 days before Easter and 40 days before Christmas. And very Orthodox Christians, and my family is Orthodox Christian. we have similar behaviors in the sense that 40 days before Easter and 40 days before Christmas, not only that we fast, but when we eat after the sundown, we cannot have any, we have to be vegan for 40 days. So we cannot eat any animal products, anything like that. People don't do it anymore. I mean, they're not as disciplined as Muslims about Ramadan, but it is a practice that my grandparents practiced my whole life. I've seen them. I have a lot of friends who still fast during this time of the year. But when we were working during Ramadan online, I think the first Ramadan was fully online. Even the second Ramadan was fully online, right? We were completely in quarantine, if I remember, or was it partially open? I don't remember. Malaysia was so confusing with semi-open, open. But for many of us, it was very, very important to understand, and that's why you need some emotional maturity to this, to understand that now not only we have to deal with the complexities of working from home, having children, having elderly, having to cook, trying to figure out, when they're going to come and fog and they're going to call you in an important meeting while you're hungry, while your fridge is 2 meters away. Because it's one thing to be away from food in the office, but it's another thing to be literally 2 meters away from the fridge. So I have to say that in our case, at least, we try to reduce the number of meetings that we had during Ramadan, or at least have them really, really early in the morning, so people don't accuse the intense amount of fatigue. Now, this is just the Muslim perspective, but obviously, we're gonna have the Chinese New Year. We're gonna have a lot of Indian holidays, and I think showing a little bit of humanity in crisis is what we need to feel like, you know what, it sucks, but at least I have somebody in my corner. I'm saving a lot of time for Q&A, so if you don't have any questions for me, just so you know, I'm going to go and cry in a corner after this because you don't like me. I'm going to tell you that I need validation. But this is probably my last slide that I'm going to talk about, and then I'll turn off my slides and I want to take some Q&A. Cognitive readiness, and I save this for the end, is a very, very hard skill to develop, and it requires about 100 other skills to develop. Okay, I'm not gonna, I need a picture before I start crying, all right? When my makeup is still fresh, Amira, because I actually put on makeup just for you, just so you know, I don't wake up like this, believe it or not. So like I said, cognitive readiness for me is probably one of the most important skills, and it requires a bunch of other skills, not just this one, but is the mental preparation, including skills, knowledge, ability, motivations, dispositions, that a person needs to establish and to sustain competent performance. Did you hear that? 18 months. For 18 months, we had to be constantly mentally prepared for no matter what. How many of you feel a lot more tired mentally in the last 18 months than you felt before? Anybody feels more mentally tired? Not physically tired, mentally tired than before. So, you know why we are mentally tired? Fadliana raised her hand. I absolutely agree. And so now I'm used to working from home already. Yes, I'm used to, but what I'm not used to now having to go back in a hybrid mode. So Lisha says she's fine, but it's a very common feedback. So it depends, because it comes and goes, right? Absolutely, Evangeline. Mental tiredness makes you physically tired. And if you want, I can talk a little bit about that, because there's a connection. But mental fatigue doesn't come from the fact that now you work from home. Mental fatigue comes, especially in the second wave of COVID, it comes from the lack of not just clarity ahead, but the lack of understanding what's happening, of knowing what's happening, of having any sort of deadline end of this, right? If somebody would have said at the beginning of lockdown, we're going to be in lockdown for a year. Okay, fine. Then you start looking at the calendar like, all right, 1 more month, 2 more months, 3 more months, 4 more months, right? That is a very good point, Evelyn, too. Mentally tired of thinking what others are trying to establish. Absolutely, absolutely, so much so. But when we don't have a light at the end of the tunnel, and actually there's a lot of research that says that the first wave of COVID was actually less damaging than the second wave of COVID, because in the first wave, we still had hope. We were like, oh, by the end of the summer, we're going to be over, right? I mean, we said in March, we're going to go in lockdown. By June, July, we're going to be fine. And then it got worse and worse. And then we had some sort of opening and we're like, oh yeah, we're back. And then we weren't, and then we're back again. And now the vaccines are not working for some parts of the world. So when humans don't have sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, an ending, a clarity of seeing a deadline, hope, that it's so good, Amira, a never-ending teasing. Oh, that it's so good. Thank you, Amira. It's very hard to keep your sort of mindset at the same pace. And that's why we get mentally tired. It's because we're constantly trying to figure things out in the background, right? Catherine says there are people who feel much more tired because they have to manage work, household, kids at the same time. Not sure what is the best advice that HR can provide. Catherine, I think you're surrounded by HR experts here, so I'm sure that your colleagues can reply to that. So everybody, if we can show a little bit of empathy to Catherine's question, maybe we can help. What do you tell your people who are tired because they multitask? So at the ASB, our curriculum is infernal. Like, we are putting our students through the ringer. MIT is very, very strict, and so are we. But I had an impromptu town hall with my students last week, and they pretty much said, we feel like we're gonna crash. We literally feel like we're at the point of, we're animals. We don't have capacity for managing emotions. Our cognitive readiness is very low. We're just scraping through. So I was looking at one of the things that I love about Malaysia is that we have so many holidays. So I think October 19th, we're celebrating something again. It's also great that we have so many kings. So it's always somebody's birthday. Sorry about that. But I think there's a birthday on October 19th, right? There's a celebration, and that's a Tuesday. So the Monday we had class. We had two classes on Monday. So I called my team and I said, the birthday of the Prophet. Okay. So it's a big holiday. So we celebrate all the holidays at ASB, and we said, if Tuesday is a holiday, then let's give the Monday off. But we had a lot of assignments, and we're like, all right, if we have a lot of assignments on Monday, how can we postpone them, or how can we delay them? So I called a couple of faculty. I said, can you postpone your assignment? Can you push your class for later on? And I know in a way I'm just pushing away the pain, but we managed to create space and give the students Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off. So yesterday we had a town hall and we announced it to the students. And I have to say, at least half of them started crying. Like, physically, they broke down and started crying. Because I think the pressure of constantly being on, of constantly being cognitively ready, of never seeing a moment of breather is just overwhelming. Now, obviously, not everybody can cancel work across the organization, but I think if there's moments where you feel like, you know what, the cost of not working is actually lower than the cost of working, maybe we can also do that. Evangeline says, being in healthcare, we keep coming back to the hospital to manage work, manpower planning, etc. So we at HR try to increase some online engagement activities to boost employee morale who have not been working from home. Evangeline, where do you work? I mean, once again, if we think it's hard for us, what is it like to be a healthcare professional these days? I don't know. Oh, man. Heslina says, I allow my team flexibility and give them more autonomy to complete the work. This is to accommodate their family needs and deliverables. Absolutely. But that's why, see, if you do that, Heslina, that's why you want your people to be more cognitively ready. That's why you need your people to be more culturally and ethically respectful. You need people to be a little bit more humble, because otherwise they start to think that I'm the only one who does the work. You need your people to be emotionally mature so they don't have this outbursts, right? You need your people to listen carefully, because if you want to give people flexibility and autonomy, when you're in a meeting, listen carefully and then let you go and do the work, right? You need people to learn how to manage up. So flexibility doesn't come and autonomy doesn't come, I don't want to say cheap, but doesn't come without any sort of expectations and requirements, right? So like I said, these are my top 10 smart skills. that I think are very important in trying to figure out how to balance this, multi-dimensional universe that we live in, anywhere, like I said, from emotional maturity to adaptability, which, like I said, I feel like today it's even more important. Validation is so important, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot highlight that enough. Remind everybody that they are human and their contribution matters, but don't validate the way you would cheer. It's very different. And then try to remain cognitively ready. And with this, I am going to end my presentation here. I'm going to stop sharing my slides and invite you maybe to turn on your camera if anybody feels camera ready, and then maybe turn on your mics to have some, I don't even want questions necessarily, maybe more reflections, because like I said, everybody here is an expert. I'm just here to manage a conversation. Thank you so much, Amira.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a very engaging session. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone else did. Does anyone have any questions for Professor Loredana before I force everyone to take a group photo?
Oh, look at this. This is so cool. We are in a conference room. Oh, my goodness, that's fabulous. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm Heslina.
Hi, Heslina. Thank you so much for being my partner today.
Your presentation was great. It addresses quite a lot of our concerns. I'm speaking for my own team. I can't speak for the company as a whole, but I'm speaking on how you manage your own team. It is actually quite tough, not because they're not competent or they don't know how to do their work, but because the nature of my work, I do a lot of investigations. I manage disciplinary and court cases. So there's a lot of discussions that must be carried out. So when we have this limited capability and Zoom makes you talk one person at a time, whereas if you were in the office, you could talk multiple, I could handle multiple conversations at the same time, So that's where I think my team and I also feel this stress. And then what is important in my view in this new environment, it is the ability for us to catch up with technology also, because the technology makes a lot of work easier. But for a generation like me, I'm not young. I'm not particularly young. I'm nearly retirement.
What the hell are you talking about? Come closer. Let me see you. What? How can you be near retirement when you look like a puppy? I have to tell you. I don't know what you have for breakfast.
So this is the part I, as a boss, find I cannot catch up. There's so many things that I'm lost. So I get my team to get and help me do this, help me do that, So sometimes we feel very challenged, and this thing is no joke. It's going to go on. It's going to be something that's a norm. But we, like you say, we have to adapt. We have to make it happen. So I always tell my staff, you got to change. You got to do differently, But well, it's still tough. And going back to office is no good either. I actually, when I went back to office, I wanted to go home.
I understand. I feel the same way. I feel the way when I go to the office, like all I'm waiting for is going home. So let me just say, thank you, Fadliana, for saying I look like Zulema. I don't know who Zulema is, but I'll Google it after. But so there's a see, I don't have this reference. Somebody can tell me who Zulema. But to go back to your point, my love, Heslina, is think a little bit that if you have a hard time catching up with technology, probably your staff has a very hard time catching up with everything else that you know, right? Because you might not know the latest gadgets. I'm still not on TikTok. I don't understand how TikTok works. I'm a pretty savvy technology person. I don't know how TikTok works. Then I thought, do I really need TikTok in my life? Probably not. I'm good. I waste a lot of time on Instagram as it is. But it's maybe your contribution to the team. It's not you to be an expert in technology, but for you to be the expert in these very heavy case studies.
Is that her?
Oh, wow. All right. I'll Google that. Thank you. So to go back to Heslina's point, you can bring a contribution that nobody else has. Right? You can bring your wisdom and your experience and the fact that you're near retirement, I'm sure that you have more knowledge about these very difficult cases that you're doing, and you can compensate with that. I have a couple of my team members who are sort of learning Monday.com and Slack and things like that. And I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to learn that. I have to focus on other things, but you do so. And then you tell me what I need to do and I'll follow, because followership as a boss, it's also very important. So I would say, don't feel bad about the fact that you're not an expert in the technology. Think more from a multiple perspectives. What is it that you bring? What is it that they bring? And maybe together you're this comprehensive unity rather than everybody has to be everything. Anybody else? Thank you for that so much.
Yes. Okay. Does anyone else want to share anything else, or should we get ready to smile and say cheese with Zulema?
You know, I'm Googling this now, right? Zulema and Locked Up. Is Locked Up a movie?
It's a series.
Oh, wow. How is it that I spend 4 hours a day on Netflix and I don't know about the show?
All right. You can watch her Money Heist as well. I think she's in the show Money Heist as well.
Now you know what I'm gonna do after this, right?
Yeah.
A bit like a Prison Break, but the Spanish version.
Spanish version. I like Spanish. Do you guys watch a lot of TV? Do you like watching a lot of Netflix during the pandemic? I feel like I should work for Netflix now, because all I want to do at the end of 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours, like today of meetings, is just lie like a vegetable and just have sort of like light content. I don't even call it a guilty pleasure, because I think if it's a pleasure, I shouldn't feel guilty about it. But there's also this, what I learn is that because we think so much and because we're constantly stretching our cognitive readiness, when we're off, we don't even have the ability anymore. Some of us, I'm sure some of you are more extraordinary, but we don't even have the ability to do things that we used to do before that were a little bit more fun or lighter or things like that. Now it's just a state of vegetative, being. Like all I want to do is just go home. And then once you go home, what do? You just breathe. Oh man. Can we fast forward 5 years from now on and see what the world looks like? Because I don't want to deal with 2022. I see a lot of you are smiling, but I'm telling you, 2022 is not going to be a lot easier than 2021.
Still a lot of adjustment for next year. Still a lot of adjustment. I mean, it's because everything is so new. It's never happened before. Coming up with SOPs and guidelines and practices is tough, because we are all different human beings and from different backgrounds, different, how we've been brought up differently. And now everybody's got to face this pandemic. It's tough being in HR and trying to be fair to everybody. And, that was what I liked. I think a previous speaker said that once everybody's at one, under this situation, everyone is special.
Yes,
and I like that. And I like that. Yes, it's always, there's an issue to trying to be fair to everybody, right?
Yeah.
In coming up with the guidelines, someone who's married, who's not married, with kids, without kids, pregnant, not pregnant, male and female, those who are living apart from their spouses, living apart from their families. It's been tricky. And I think the most important thing is we try to have that open communication with everybody, and HR we need to be the voice of our people to management, because at the end of the day, yes, we understand the management say, we've got overheads, we still have to get salary, we still have to make business, we have to still, pay our bills. But at the same time, we have to be sensitive to our people now working from home and facing this life, Yeah.
I like that. Everybody is special. I thought only millennials think that everybody is special, but it turns out everybody feels special. That was really nice sharing. Thank you so much for that.
That's welcome.
Everybody has a hard job. It's not just HR. I talked to IT, and my IT people are going nuts because, so interesting. A lot of people got into IT because they like technology and they don't like dealing with people. And once you join IT, you realize you spend more time dealing with people than you spend with machines, because now you have to manage right? You have to manage your stakeholders. Then I see the people in finance sort of struggling to figure out how to keep the books balanced, because I just had a conversation with one of my teams today and I said, do we have any revenue to show for this year? And they said, no, but we also have no cost. Is that good? I was like, it's definitely not good. So, I think what you just said was really important, that everybody is special and everybody's going through pain. And maybe that's why we need to increase our emotional maturity and our smart skills.
The connection.
Mm-hmm.
How do
I
you
don't
do
like humans.
connection?
Yeah, I don't like humans very much. One of the things that I learned in life is that I don't like people very much. And that's why I became a professor. So ironic. But one of the reasons why I thought that I don't like people is that we are all so complicated. And I realized, yeah, we are all very complicated. But at the end of the day, we still need each other. So I might say I don't like you, but, I can't live without people. We cannot live without people. We might say the job is easy, the people are not, but if there's any inspiring, positive stories coming out of COVID, they are all about people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we just have to manage and adapt the way we communicate with each other and that connection. I think that's very, very important, right? My company is back in the office.
Nice.
Well, alternate teams.
Where do you work?
In a company called MTDC, Malaysian Technology Development Corporation. So we invest in technology-based companies. So
I know your company.
Oh, you do? Okay. Mm-hmm. That's nice, because a lot of people don't really know about it. They say, oh, MTDC, or is that tourism? Is that timber? So we invest in technology-based companies. So the very nature of our business is meeting people, because we're in the business of growing companies, so we meet people all the time. So now the team can't really meet people, so we have to meet them over screen, or phone call. It's not the same, and then going to their factories or their companies to see their technology, in action. So that's pretty tough. Then the company will have to switch on your video and you walk around the factory, so this is our machine doing this is our machine doing that. So it's like, okay, but it's still that human connection, seeing it. So that's different.
So true.
Manage again.
So true. I also put my email address and my Instagram and my LinkedIn. Please connect with me. I would love to hear from you again. And like I said, for me, all these skills that we need to develop more during and post-pandemic they're not soft skills. There's nothing soft about any of the skills that you just mentioned. I think we just all need to collectively to become smarter and sharper. And maybe next time I'll see you, we'll talk more about sharp skills too, because they are very important. But today was more about getting smart.
Amira, we can't hear you.
I know, I muted myself.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing. And thank you so much, Ms. Loredana. Umi, can we take a group photo?
Sure.
I've been practicing my smile for some time.
Everybody, please pretend that this was fun.
Ready? If everyone can turn on the video, it'll be great. So all the seats are be filled.
Yeah, where's yours, Umi? Yours has your name.
I tried mine, but some laptop are not compatible with this background. Okay.
This is a very fancy background. What is this?
I know.
Immersive.
Immersive.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Done.
That's it? One? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Hold on. Let me take one like this too. I just want to show immersive to my team because this is really interesting.
Yeah,
my students look like that in class. Oh, I also want to tell you, once our campus opens on the 15th of October, it's considered to be one of the most beautiful buildings in Asia. I highly, highly recommend that you send me an email and come and visit. It's spectacular. It's spectacular. It's next to Bank Negara, right next to Bank Negara. Oh, thank you, Gordon. That's a very nice message. I'm going to copy that. You should share with everybody else. This is so nice. Gordon sent me a private message just so you know we have that kind of relationship.
Clever.
Very nice. It's very, very nice. It's sort of like an anagram for what people stand for. Thank you. That's very sweet. And thank you for having me. I hope this was worth your time and energy. And I could not be more tired of Zoom, but if I have to do it, at least I'll try to do a good job, right? Like everybody else.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. And thank you, everyone. Our next session will start at 3:30. So we have a bit of a break to get coffee, stretch our feet, private chat with Loredana if you want to. And we'll see you back here at 3:30 for our last session today, the panel. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Umi, and thanks, Amira. Thank you very much for having me. I hope to see you again.
Thank you very much,
Most
Prof.
welcome. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I'm so glad you did.
Me too. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Bye.